And we are live. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with one of my favorite nerds, Nate the Nerdarch. What's up, buddy?
Greetings. Not much, just excited for another day of nerding.
Nice. Nerding is very exciting. We got a couple people hanging out with us already. Uh, I started to go into our infamous GM 911 folder yesterday, but I never quite got to it. The questions were just rolling in. So maybe we could kick it off with that one today. We had a Nerd Guy 101 with a question. So pretty much like the long and short of it is he's got a high level party and they're fighting a Tarask and they're kind of getting whooped on. The Trask is getting whooped on, but the wizard has, Private Sanctum and Lehman's Tiny Hut both prepared. Now, I don't remember what the casting time on Lehman Tiny's Hut is, or if it's a fast spell or not, or if it's one of those ritual spells, so you could do it either way. But either way, doesn't really matter so much because the ultimate question is if the party short rests, then that means the monster can short rest. So what he wants to know is, will the monster be able to expend healing hit die just like the players? Now, I said that's a very good question. And I was like, well, anything that has hit die would probably be able to do it. So I consulted the sage. And the same question was asked, but about animal companions. And since animal companions can expend their hit die in healing and recovery dice, so I would have to infer has no sound. What's going on, everyone? So does no one have sound or just the Friganator not have sound? That is the question.
Well, no one else is saying it except him, so
what's going on? So I would have to infer from that indeed monsters during a short rest could expend recovery dice and get hit points back.
I would say that is true as well, but specifically for the Tarask, doesn't it have fast healing or regeneration or something?
I think it used to, but I don't think it does anymore.
That's a shame.
It should. They really did neuter the poor Tarask, and he's not what he used to be.
Yeah, so I would go with it, yes, it can rest, and yeah, it would just gain hit dice back.
Yes, it would. I mean, it wouldn't gain anything else back, but it's a Tarask. In this edition, the Tarask doesn't have extra stuff like it did before, so you're just gonna have to work your way through a wall of hit points again.
Yes, and I would say also Liamon's Tiny Hut puts you in a space, right? But it doesn't say that nothing can happen to the true space around that space. So what if the Tarask just built up a whole bunch of boulders, and buried them inside this hut?
Worse,
dug.
Worse, the spell ends and you're just in a pile of Tarask poo. You've really annoyed it.
Yeah, because maybe you guys went into a down into a hole somewhere, got into the ground somehow. So it just digs and digs and digs, and then when the spell ends, you guys fall out of the hut.
Yeah, Tesmic confirms they got rid of regen in 5th edition. Dylan Black, Tarask should be an event rather than a creature, in my opinion. Well, then, Dylan, what do you think? Does the event get to expend healing hit die during a short rest or not? Let's see. War Eagle would go with the same. I would let it. So I think everyone is kind of in agreement. Plus, like Watts is kind of weighed in a roundabout way. I don't know if I've seen some other ones as well that answers that question, but the Beast Companion, that seems pretty solid. So, guys, whenever you guys have questions or GM911s, just put GM911 first. So this way we know that it is, and it's just like you guys aren't just chatting to each other. It makes it a little bit easier for us to follow. Snuffle Vaz, yeah. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, that's where I was going. So do you guys think Dexterity is a god stat? Is it something you would house rule? I guess house rule to be less god stat. You know what? I'm cool with Dexterity being used for to hit on things that are finesse, but I kind of feel like also doing the damage is nice and simple, but with it also being initiative, with it also being armor class, and with it being able to be your attack and damage pluses.
And it's an important saving throw.
And it's an important saving throw. So it does 5 awesome things. So, I mean, it kind of is it's a stat that you have to really consider. Am I screwing over my character if I put an 8 in this? Like, am I just not going to be very useful? And I've had an 8 before. I put plate mail on top of that 8. But
if you're a strength-based fighter, there's a good possibility you might do that. But it kind of neuters you in those other areas, which kind of stinks. I almost want to go back to 3rd edition with if you fight with a weapon using 2 hands, you do more damage. Where
yes.
It used to be 1.5 your strength.
Yes.
But it kind of goes against I think it goes against the grain of 5e, but at the same time, like there's got to be like a balancing factor as to why not to be a dex fighter. Now, granted, you do more damage on average if you're a strength-based fighter, but it doesn't seem significantly more enough. And then to top it off, you can be a dex-based fighter, use a shield, and you could then take duelist and get a +2 to damage. So the low end of your damage comes up as well.
So it is pretty much the best stat out of the bunch in the most situations, I'd say, because there's sometimes where you're going to wish that you had a higher wisdom, like when you're trying to make a saving throw against something terrible. So, they all have their place. I think it's up to the DM to kind of mitigate the character that's going to have that ridiculous dex score. Let them shine where they're going to, but not let them kind of like always rule the game combat wise. So put in different scenarios that aren't just kill it till it dies, and that gives other characters ways of dealing with the situation.
Makes sense. So Afro Chef, I don't know if he's one who cooks afros or not, but GM91, greetings everyone. Wondering if you had any advice for episodic evil campaign. Going to have one vet player, 3 new, and I'm a GM in the middle of the road. Oh god, I hate evil campaigns.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. Don't do it. Pick something else that you think is fun.
So
don't do an evil campaign.
Yeah, the problem is like evil always turns on itself, and no one plays evil right for the most part, is my experience. Everyone plays it as a caricature of what evil is. Like, none of their evil characters seems to have feelings, emotions, attachments, anything that would basically make you human. Like, I'm evil, so I don't have any of that. And that's not
anger and lust and greed. What are you talking about? They don't have any emotions.
Well,
yeah, true. Like more complex. I understand what you meant. Yeah, more complex things than just, oh, these are bad things, so it's okay for me to feel these.
Yeah. So, and if you're going to do it, you need like you definitely need a unifying theme that's going to get your players all to work together. And then the other thing is like, in a party of evil players, like usually they all end up trying to screw each other at some point. So like the games always break down. Like I feel like those are the games that are least likely to continue on. So you have to figure out like their motives. That you need to do a hardcore session 0 and really talk about what evil means to each of them and what motivates their characters. And I would greatly recommend that you make them have bonds amongst each other so that they have a connection, so they're more likely to work together and continue to work together.
Yeah, I would say I had a instance in which I actually enjoyed an evil game, and there was this all overarching god being called the Overlord, and he was sending his like top people to help conquer and subjugate a planet. So we were teleported in as these epic level evil characters, and we weren't going to fight with each other because it was just going to get us killed. There was no, like, it was actually, we were encouraged through the threat of death from Overlord that, hey, we're off the table for conflict, basically. Everything else, basically, we have a mission to complete, and one of us dying is going to reduce the effectiveness of that mission. Therefore, we couldn't do it.
So Zareth game in question. So I was playing this game while we were role playing. I decided not to tell the other player about my warlock pack and goes off with his character like he knows about my pack. Not rolling or anything. So since this is considered metagaming, should I let it slide or approach the group about it? So okay, so I guess he just assumed he metagamed that he knew. Well, I mean, you guys can discuss it, but I don't know. It's just one of those. It's one of those things. Like I would think like the characters that try and keep stuff secret is kind of weird. Like I mean, through role playing, you could do it. I don't like a ton of that, but you would think like if you're traveling with a group and you're going to go into dangerous situations, you'd be like, hey, what do you do? How are you going to cover my backside? And
yeah,
like
there's. Okay.
And that should have occurred with that player. And then like you might have said some things, and then maybe they might have like had a chance to figure stuff out depending on what kind of character they are, or once they actually see you in action. But yeah, I mean, the other problem is metagaming, and you could just talk to the player and the group and see where everyone kind of like weighs in on that stuff.
Yeah, if it's an open secret, that's a different thing than if not many people knew about it, but this person happened to, and then they just broke it to the rest of the group. So if it's an open secret, everybody knows that your character has warlock levels. It could just be a slip up where they're like, oh, well, you told me about the character. I just didn't think that was out of game, or they weren't remembering that it was out of game. They just know that they know this information. And that's one of the easiest ways to do like a slip up like that, is just simply to, as a person, know the information, but not recognize that your character didn't know it. So it could just be that.
Yeah, Jen from Pixelscapes. If it bothers you, which it obviously does, ask them to knock it off. Please stop being a jerk. That is always a route you could go. So we got another one here from Joseph. GM911. I'm trying to challenge my level 5 party with fights, but they kill everything I throw at them with no teamwork. I want to force teamwork on them. Do I do that without killing them all? Huh. I kind of have a little bit of a problem with the one piece of the sentence.
Force my players to do something?
Yeah, like, you know what? You can put situations out for them, and they're going to respond to it however they're going to. Whether they work as a team or not, that's one of the things we don't actually get to decide as the GM. Like, we get to control everything in the world, and I get it. Like, maybe you wanted to play out like a comic book or books you've read or whatever, but the one thing that the players actually get to control is their characters. And that's the one point as GMs, we just have to back off and go, all right, we don't have control of this one aspect of the game, and it's okay. They're going to handle it however they are. If you feel like the fights are too easy, then yeah, sure, you can ratchet them up. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to work better together or anything like that. They're making the fights tougher isn't really the way to do it. Having tasks that need to be completed during a battle does. Like if there's certain things that have to happen in a particular order, that is actually more likely to get them to work together than you just ratcheting up the power level of the combat.
Agreed.
So I would try that. Maybe they just need more complex combat encounters where it's like, okay, the way to win isn't just to kill the monster. Maybe there's 2 or 3 objectives that they have to try and achieve almost at the same time. Then that would probably go a long way towards fixing that issue. And then also it's also more organic because you're not making them do anything. This is just the situation.
Okay, so what was it? Andrew Hurd. Question: what do you guys think of an elemental that is all 4 smashed into 1? And I remember seeing a video from somebody about that. And it sounded pretty interesting because I think as you did, they were I think they were converting it to 5th edition. And they would they said like when you hit it, other different types of elementals can come off of it based if you hit it like with energy damage. The energy damage of the type, if it was elemental, it wouldn't actually damage the creature. It would actually kind of like assist it in spawning these other elementals. At least that's where they took it. So I'm trying to look it up right now which one it is. But I think it's Dungeon Dad. But I'm not totally sure, so I'm checking it out.
But yeah, if you think it'll be a fun thing to do, then do it. It doesn't actually, why not? It's like, Super Skrull's awesome. Why? Because he's got like all the powers of the Fantastic Four. Could definitely make for an interesting encounter. Again, it's not going to be particularly overpowered because, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, you have economy of action, so they can only do so much at one time anyway.
Well, I mean, you give it legendary actions and things, and I think this would have legendary actions.
Yeah, why not? You could make it some kind of like primordial super being or powerful creature.
It's just a little wonky in my head because you think, all right, well, this has got to be big enough that if it has a fire side and a water side, you have, keep the hot side hot and the cold side cold.
I think McDonald's had that problem years ago. What was that sandwich? I forget what it was.
I don't know, but it didn't last very long.
No. So I think they could probably take care of that. So yeah, go for it. Have fun. I think, like Nate said, give us some legendary actions, maybe some lair actions. Sounds like it'd be a blast, especially as a big bad, like towards the end of a campaign arc.
Yeah, and I think the video is called Elemental Archons Monsters of the Week for Dungeons and Dragons. It's from Dungeon Dad. So
there you go. Go check it out after this video. So we have Ivan, GM 911. What do you think of changing the aesthetics of armor? And Nate's gonna love this one. Like making Gambison padded armor have all the mechanical properties of half plate. This is something that I think is great. Your thoughts? Go ahead, Nate. You can have this one.
I like the idea of having Gambison. I think that's a type of armor that was prevalent, but is kind of like not really used. Now, properties of half plate. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty because I like to stick with 5th edition simplicity. So I could say that, I mean, it's pretty tough. It protects you from bludgeoning pretty well. There's a whole bunch of benefits of it. I just don't know if it could be like half plate. Okay. I think Shadowversity did a video on Gambison. So that'll give you a better idea of where Gambison should fall.
Yeah, and he's pretty sharp on that stuff. So, well, here's the other thing too, Ivan. Are you the GM? Because like that's like the main thing. If you're the GM, then you can kind of like tailor the game how you want it, as long as you have a group of players that are willing to play that game. Then it's not an issue. Like whatever your table accepts is fine. It doesn't matter what the rules. You can throw them all out for that matter. If you have a table of players that are all willing to play in that game and you guys are gonna have fun, it doesn't matter. Change whatever you guys want to play. It's your game. Essentially, play it the way you want. Have a blast.
Agreed.
Wild picks. Dex is overpowered in this edition. Intelligence is essentially useless unless you're a wizard. I'd like to find ways to increase the value of stats other than Dex. Yeah, it's tough. Dex is a bit of a super stat. I mean, your knowledge checks is going to be your intelligence. But even like bards and rogues could have a middling intelligence to low intelligence and still do way better if they have expertise. So yeah, that is tough. And I don't know what the fix is. I saw somewhere where someone talked about possibly using maybe feats or something that gives more relevance to the other stats. One of the war mage does something cool where you get to add your intelligence modifier to initiative, which is pretty sweet. But it's like you'd have to tack on like a bunch of stuff to really fix that, and then it'd be clunky.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to promote situations as a DM that occur that require the use of those abilities. Like I said earlier, for basically dulling the uberness of Dex stat by simply just making it less relevant in the ways to defeat the encounters that you have. So a puzzle, don't make it a Dex-based puzzle that requires, you know, hand-eye coordination and moving pieces around quickly. If you do that and you make it more intelligence-based, you can have a situation in which the people that have the intelligence stat or have put time and effort, like, I mean, character-wise, devoted towards those other not-so-used stats, they get to have the bump. So it doesn't matter how awesome an assassin is. If there is nothing to kill in one shot, they lose some of their awesomeness. And if there's nothing to kill at all, then they're kind of irrelevant. That whole section of the character is irrelevant for the purposes of getting through an encounter. So that's where I would say go with that. Go, rather than trying to make all these homebrew rules for every single other stat, just make the game that makes Dex less relevant.
I like that. That's really good. You know what? One of the things I do a lot of times is I use alternate stats a lot for ability checks. So
that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. I don't even remember, you know, what things I switch out. I know, like the one time I did, you know, in our game is use charisma for your stealth. Sorry guys, I still have the plague. And that was to use charisma for your stealth. I did it the other night. I don't even remember what I did. Sometimes I just, you know, throw these things out as you know, as I'm doing, because it just makes sense to me at the time. So I think if you do that a little bit as well, it kind of helps. So we have a ton of questions here. Here's the one I was looking for. It jumped on me. So Jinker GM, my players are going to another plane for the final fight, and any reading advice that isn't in the PHB or DMG? Oh yeah, absolutely. I believe it was Bruce Cordell that did, or was it David Zeb? I'm not sure. That did Manual of the Planes for AD&D. That book was so awesome. Or even like 3rd edition. I would go to earlier editions and grab one of the Manuals of the Planes and use that. It probably would not be very hard to convert stuff. 5th editions, especially from the earlier editions, I feel like 5e is so easy.
Yeah, it kind of rolls into Jake Simmons' GM 911. How do I convert 3.5 monsters to 5e? Major thing is bound accuracy is a big deal, and you might have to lower their stats based on whether, you know, are they stronger than a werebear or weaker than a werebear. You can take animals and creatures that are in the 5th edition and kind of gauge them against, well, is this on par with this strength or quickness and things, and go with that. So armor class and bound accuracy, pay attention to those things. That's
You're
kind of a big deal.
I ran some Eberron stuff early on with 5e, and what I did is I used the monsters pretty much the same, didn't change anything. I just considered them to be higher CR, so I knew they were going to be more challenging for the players than what was stated. But yeah, bounded, like literally, if you wanted to do a conversion, you could. You rip out the BA, replace it with the bounded accuracy. That's going to be more accurate. Armor class is going to be a little bit more tricky, but it's definitely doable, and it depends on what exactly are you trying to do. I don't really feel like you need to rewrite all the monsters. I just feel like, for me, when I run the game, I just need the monster to work for this encounter. I don't need to be like, oh, this monster is a legal 5e monster now, because no one is going to see that. Like, I'm going to describe the monster. It's going to attack like this. It's going to, it's going to have this feel, this theme to it, and that's enough. I mean, you can do the other things if you want to. Personally, just don't think it's necessary.
And if it has the right amount of attacks, like something in 5th edition, if it has the right amount of attacks, has a similar armor class, you could just use another monster and say it just describe it as such. What was it? You've had a few creatures that were kind of completely different but used a block stat from a completely different monster and just described it as whatever you wanted it to.
Yeah, I do that stuff all the time, or I'll take several monsters and pull the pieces that I want and use them. I wanted to do like a scroll golem, but golems are actually a little bit too tough for the party. So I took like a gargoyle and a dust method, and there might have been something else, and just took the things that I wanted and just described it. The players just know the information that you give them. Sure, if they've been gaming a long time, and Jen's in the chat and she plays in that game, so she knows most of the monsters. She's been gaming for as long as I have been. But when you start doing stuff like that and you describe it, then it creates this paradigm shift and they don't have anything to go off of. So it really does a service to them because it gives them a new monster that they haven't encountered before, and it becomes exciting. And and for me as the GM, something just wasn't fitting the niche that I wanted, so I kind of just created it. And like I said, I'll do this on the fly a lot of times where if I'm gaming from my computer, it's really easy. I might have like 3 windows open that have the various information in it that I can refer to, but I don't actually like build the stat block anymore. There's a time when I might have done that, but rarely will I do it. There was another game that I did for a fan game for a one shot, and I wanted to do basically like Zergs. I wanted to make Zergs, and I literally just mixed, I believe, the knight NPC with a knight NPC with an ANKEG. And I just described it, and and like Professor Bill was in that game as well as Alan Bingham, and they're like, "Oh my god, this game was so creepy," just because the way things were described. I just tried to flavor things and give things the theme from like the Aliens movies and the StarCraft game. I even used like creep and stuff like that. So, so a lot of times it's just more about your descriptions, and you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck. Or you can go the other way and just rebuild everything from the ground up. It just depends on what exactly you're trying to do.
It's a little bit too much work unless you're building something to sell or something like that. It's a bit too much work.
The Lazy Dungeon Master is a great book. I would write the laziest Dungeon Master book. It was just too lazy.
the super lazy yet not too lazy to not write a book. Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide. Wild picks. Armor in D&D is so strange. Why does it stop from getting hit rather than mitigating damage? Yes, simplicity of gameplay is good, but it's just real world strange. I feel like, from what I understand, you can describe things however you'd like, but you don't lose hit points unless you are hit and they deal damage to you. So really, armor just increases the chance that you're not going to be dealt damage. Is the important part about the whole game mechanics. So I actually talk about getting this struck on the shield, getting hit on the armor. The way I describe things is not black and white exactly what the dice say, in the sense of it still does the in-game mechanic of what it does, but the description changes the whole outlook on how you would view armor based on how you're going to describe things that go on. So you were hit. Technically, you were hit the way we talk about hitting outside of the D&D game, but you have not lost hit points, so it was not a hit in the game.
Yeah, the idea that was explained to me years and years ago was, in that 6 seconds you get X amount of attacks. But the truth of the matter is you're parrying, you're feinting, you're making actually many more attacks than the attacks you're rolling. Those are just the blows that have a chance of landing. And oftentimes I will describe those as like, maybe getting hit with the flat of the blade, a pommel strike, things like that. Because let's face it, this idea that you're getting stabbed with run through with a spear or a sword time and time again, and you're actually taking damage, is ridiculous. You know how many times you can actually get run through with a sword or a spear? It's like once.
And then you're on the ground.
Probably. Right. So, yeah. So like how the armor is described or whatever isn't really relevant. Actually, I actually feel that's more unrealistic to describe it as like a damage reduction, because literally if you describe it that way, it means you literally got stabbed.
The damage reduction with plate mail is when you are hit in like the play action, like the cinematic action, but you don't take damage. That's the damage reduction in plate mail, is the fact that your armor is so high that when they normally would have hurt you, they do not. That's your damage reduction.
And not only that, like my understanding from like Ted mostly is like historical fighting. Like when you were fighting someone in plate mail, like you weren't really going to stab them or cut them per se. Like you're going to try and bend the joints of their armor. You're going to try and knock them down so you could stab them in the face with a knife or something. So like, you know, D&D is such an abstraction. And, you know, if you want a more realistic game, like D&D is not it.
But I don't think you need a more realistic game, because all it does is make it all super video gamey, but you're the one doing all the calculations for it, rather than simply just saying cinematically, oh, you know, you got hit on the breastplate and the arrow flies off into the distance. Well, it's because you're wearing armor. That's your damage reduction. You wore armor and you didn't just get hit in the chest.
Yeah, so I don't know. You know, if each to their own. Where, you know, you can adjust your game however you want. That, you know, that's kind of my thoughts on it. A lot of that stuff I just don't feel like it's worth spending a lot of gray matter on, and I rather just play and have fun. And I prefer more cinematic games over realistic anyway. Like I would rather, you know, that's why I watch movies. Like if it was gritty and real, which most of them are, even the best ones, it'd be boring. Or you know, it'd be like Game of Thrones, but only worse. Your favorite people are always just dead.
Kelsey Nicole 911. What could I do to make a good deity to use for a chaotic evil character? That's like an uber reluctant cleric build there. So I mean, are the chaotic evil because that's their upbringing, or they're chaotic evil and they're trying to, you know, repent? I think there's going to have to be some kind of character. There's going to have to be a planned out character arc for this player.
Who wants
willy-nilly?
Who wants the good deity? You, the DM, or the chaotic evil player? That's like where you have to start. Because if it's you, the DM, it's going to be trickier. Because I would think, in my mind, if a good deity has taken interest in an evil character, it means they plan to use them for something, or they believe them to be redeemable. So, you know, so you have to work from one of those two angles. If it's because the deity believes they're redeemable, yet the player is not on board for being redeemed, then that's kind of a dead end. If it's the deity has a purpose for that character, that's different. But then you're also getting into a tricky area as the GM in affecting player agency. So how do you walk that line? How do you allow your player their agency and still be like, oh, well, this is technically an omnipotent being that can see can see all the multitude of possibilities and not actually be an omnipotent being, right? In order to make that kind of happen. So I would have to go, you know, why? Like you'd have to start there and kind of go out from there. Is it what the player wants? If it's what the player wants, it's actually easy. It's just what Nate said. Plan out the arc.
And make sure that you're both understanding of where the arc's going and how it's going to happen. Not like specific instances, but kind of say like, hey, this, you know, round 7th level, I plan on being this type of character. And I think some people are going to be like, well, that doesn't feel like I'm organically playing the character. It's like, well, you're not really organically playing the character anyway. Your guy's sitting down at a table rolling dice. So that needs to kind of like get over that part of it and like plan out, like I have a reluctant cleric. I've planned out a story arc. He is now like full into clericness, and he rarely doubts himself and his mission. But in the beginning, he was very doubtful, and he also had a lot of, not doubtful like the mindset of, oh, I don't believe you exist, but doubtful in the sense of like, I should not be chosen. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, you got it wrong, buddy.
Yeah, I was telling the deity, you got it wrong. And he basically said, no, I've got it right. And I understood. I made that character arc. I understood that by the time I'm like 13th, 14th level, I'm going to feel like, and specific things happened. I was like, okay, well, I resurrected somebody. Well, brought somebody back to life twice. And I've saved a party a few times with different divine powers. So like I'm seeing the benefit and I'm seeing the good. And I also helped out the entire countryside by increasing the plant growth and all that stuff for farming. So there's all these things that I've seen that have helped good. Like I'm like a force for good in the world. So it's helped build me up. So that chaotic evil guy is going to have instances where there's going to be these situations where he does good things that puts him kind of like, you know, that saying that you're made up of the actions you've already made, you know, and they're kind of like directing you towards your future, that concept. So,
and like one of the easy ways of doing that too is like for that chaotic evil character to have objectives they want to achieve, and the only way to achieve them is doing like good things. Again, apologies for the plague. Let's start the roll call. Good call, Zarif Gaming. I was just thinking at myself. We're cruising along here. And actually, we got 90 people in the chat today, guys. Thanks for showing up. Well, not anymore. Briefly. It was up, then it was down. They saw Nate, got excited, and then saw me, and they're like, I'm out.
No, it's a combined effort, because I have to say, all those people viewing Eclipse, I'm just going to say that it was the Eclipse that made that one so bad.
Oh, yeah.
I did a live chat, and it was the Eclipse day, and man, it was terrible.
They're like, he's not showing an Eclipse at all.
Yeah.
All right, you want to jump in there with the roll call, save my voice a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll just need to find where it starts. Okay, so Kelsey Nicole from Texas, Tesmic from Australia, Jen from Maryland, Patrick from Sweden, Dylan from Charlotte, North Carolina. Deep Dungeon Games just says sup. Zarif Gaming, Ruidoso, New Mexico. AJ Kinney, Lopez Island, Washington. Scratch Paper Games, Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Lagantard, UTD. I do not know what that is, but I'm going to just say it's a place maybe. Paul Hughes, over in Wales. Lincoln. Oops, it jumped on me. Blast. Lincoln, Sweden. Todd Boyce, Dallas, Texas. Ivan, freezing to death in Canada. And
dude, we got a new Sweden guy.
Deep Dungeon Games is actually in Texas, Perryton. Ramon Dozel is in Brazil. Ben Murchison is NB Canada. NYR 924 is in Massachusetts. Acolyte 14 is Boston. Noximus Jamaica Canis is in Jamaica. Go figure. Jinker GM is in Candlekeep.
I blame Professor Bell for that.
Dakota Pettit is in good old Kentucky. Crypto Spirodium 137 is in Spain. Jake Simmons is in Michigan, I believe. Beamers SRQ is in Redmont, Washington. We have a Grinlin and Message Retracted. Witherskid is Second Layer of Hell. Barhammer.
Here it comes.
Hagsastra, Sweden. Wildepex, Vancouver, Canada. You just wanted to hear me mess that up, didn't you? Goodness gracious. Limpin is Tampa, Florida. Matt Lennington is another Texan. Deploy is in Switzerland. Alexandra, I believe Welsh, as in Wales. Oh, I got to get going from the names. Jan Novak is from Czech Republic. Mr. Blind Cow, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Canada. And Purring C, Turlock, Canada, California, I believe.
I'm a little sad Nordic Dragon's not on today, because if he was, we would have 4 people from Sweden.
You dig the Sweden roll call. That's why you do the roll call. It's secretly why he does the roll call.
Yeah, I see where my peoples are.
All right, so I made it through barely. Noximus Jamaicanus, DM 911. Just need some ideas for a campaign. Players part of an adventure guild. Ex-member of the guild. Powerful illusionist is hunting and killing members of the guild.
Yeah, I saw that one too. Like, I don't know. Like, it sounds like you got an idea. So you're gonna do some murder mystery stuff.
Motivation for the illusionist is important. So he's not just offing the guild members and you've got to make it up why he's doing it in the first place. Give them clues that they don't understand that leads to that aspect of them finding out. Like it all makes sense when we hear a story or when we found out a big piece of information about him or discover that it is an illusionist or discover that it is an ex-guild member. So
and then I do have some ideas. Like because it's an illusionist, like definitely some of the murder scenes should be weird. Like this guy was eating something he shouldn't have been eating, right? Like clearly you would not eat that. Like, you know, like maybe like a spine.
It would look like a whole bunch of suicides, like crazy people suicides, like eating something that's killing them.
Yeah, like a big spiny lionfish, like you know, someone just stabbed with a fork and put it in their mouth. You know, someone, you know, and you find the body, and the fish is like lodged in their mouth, that the spines all over the place, poisoned them, and a fork in it, right? So either someone had to force feed it, no sign of a struggle, or they ate it themselves. Someone that walks, you know, is walking up somewhere's high, and they just like walk off a ledge or something because, you know, they thought it was solid ground.
Yeah, like out the hayloft. Some farm goes out the hayloft.
A crazy like wagon crash, like where like someone basically drove a wagon into the side of a cliff or something.
Or two wagons crashing and there's nobody else. Like they had plenty of space, but they like crashed head on.
Yeah, it makes no sense. So I feel like there's room to have some fun with that one. And you know, start going through you know, the different victims and stuff like that. I think, and I feel like you got plenty there to work with. And like Nate is right. You know, why are they doing it? They need motivation, and you know, flesh out some ideas about the villains. Oh, how do you feel about using a 32-point buy instead of the 24 or 25? I think it's 27, but by increasing it by 4 points,
what's that give you? Like an extra 15?
You can't get more than a 15 based on what's there now. So it's not going to be tremendous. Like you won't have a dump stat. I mean, it's fine if that's the kind of game you want to run. I mean, we've definitely done games that were lower powered or higher powered when it comes to stats. It's going to affect the early game far more than it's going to affect the later game. You might have instances where people are all good at doing like the same things because no one has dump stats. That's the only thing I would look for off the top of my head, but it'd be fine.
It'd be easier. Yeah, it would be easier to make a middle of the road, like 12s and 14s kind of character. Before racial pluses.
Yes, absolutely.
And it will matter a lot less later in the game because people are still focused on what they want to focus on.
This is great. Alexandra. Someone tried to seduce a lion, but only seeing it as a pretty lady. Come on, baby. What's wrong?
A hungry lion. Oh,
Alexandra.
Go ahead.
So we got Mila Birch, 911 GM 911. Thoughts on a secondus? I don't know what that is, if that's a misspelled word or not, or an inevitable warlock patron. Well, an inevitable is one. Okay, I know what the inevitable is.
Secondus is
that another one of those guys?
Mechanus. It's like in the hierarchy of Mechanus.
I'd be fine. It would definitely be an interesting warlock pack. It would be a real deviation from what you have now. And that patron is going to have a much different objectives and goals than, you know, the current ones. That's for sure. And it'd also be the most like, I feel like it'd be the most like straightforward and direct.
Yeah. Ted and I talked about that Mechanus patron in one of the previous live chats, and we didn't like flesh out abilities, but we kind of drove what kind of direction we would think that it's going to lean towards. So So if you need more info about it, you can check out one of the previous live chats with Ted and I. We put Mechanus in the title, so it's easier to find.
Okay, cool.
I think it was last week while you weren't around.
That would make a lot of sense. Do you guys have any other uses for a D12 other than the barbarians and some spells? I commented this in a recent video, by the way. You know what? I saw the comment, and that's writer's block. I think we talked. I feel like I talked about this with someone. We didn't get to it during the video itself. And it's like, we're just like, do we make up uses for it? But pretty much the D12 is like the oddball. And I kind of wonder like why they even bothered, because it does have so little use in the game.
But it's one of the platonic solids, man. It had to be in the game.
You know, great axe and barbarian hit points. What more do you need?
They couldn't lower the fighter's hit points to 8, so they had to increase the barbarians to D12, and the die was there, so why not? There are some creatures I think that use D12s. It's rare because they normally just double up on D6s.
On D6s, yeah. And at some point, do the hit dice go to D12s as well?
I believe so,
depending on the size.
In the progression.
Sorry, guys. Zareth Gaming. I'm planning on running a Dragonlance 5e campaign in the winter and using 3.5 info on updating the robe system to where there is no magic restrictions to the robes. Is this a good idea? I don't know that you need to restrict it. You might do something along the lines like certain traditions probably have more prevalence in the different robes than others. Like necromancy is going to lean towards black, and divination might lean towards red or white. So like you might do something like that, but it's I guess it's more about like capturing the feel of the Dragonlance game. And I don't remember particularly the spellcasters really being different. It was more about their moral composition than anything. At least that's what I recall. But Dragonlance for me was a long time ago.
I agree. Dragonlance was a while ago. So let's say back in the day, if you were an evoker, you lost access to certain spells. I think that's what they're going with. So what you would say with that is, let's say, we think of, we have the age of the internet, information is all over the place. So if we had spellcasting classes, they would just have access to every known spell and probably be making some every day. But back in the day, wizard towers were very important because whatever was in the books and the knowledge of the wizards within that tower was what you could get, unless someone else went out and got other information. But really, they were busy studying the laws of the universe and stuff like that. So if you think about, a tower is going to develop kind of a culture based on that, like being set up like a monastery practically. So if you think about the robes more like monastic orders that get the teachers are taught a certain way, they teach their apprentices a certain way. When those apprentices become regular mages, they teach their apprentices the same similar way. And rarely is there going to be any kind of like rock on the boat. Occasionally, I'm sure someone's going to summon a demon and get kicked out if they're in the wrong tower for doing that kind of stuff. But I'd say for the most part, that's how I'd play it. But adventurers are different because adventurers are people that are going to break the rules wherever they decide that they're going to break them, because they want to be able to live in the world. They're not going to be like, well, my red tower. They might have tradition like, oh, I'm from the red tower, so I do these type of spells. This is my idea on what combat should be. Or did I leave the red tower because I have a completely anti view of culturally of what the tower was about. So I left because I'm like the rebel. So I do whatever the heck I want, even though I'm a red robe wizard. So that's what I'd go with.
Nice. So Tesvik, D12s are for the half orcs. It's the way they live. It's what they live for. Great axes, barbarians. I agree. Goliath too. They actually get to roll the D12 to reduce damage, right? So we got and that what was that that was, oh yeah, Tesmic, I said that already. So crypto Spadadium 137. I don't know how you say that. I think that's the one you stumbled over earlier.
Yeah.
Now I'm stumbling on it worse. Thoughts on factions and giving out reputation as rewards for quests. Have you guys ever done it? They do it in Adventure League, as someone else has pointed out. And also, not officially. Like, I think we organically do it in our games all the time. You know, just from our characters making alliances and affiliating with different NPCs, that this starts to kind of happen. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using a system, and if it makes it easier for you and your players, that's perfect. But you know, it should, like, these kind of things should just happen in your games anyway, to a certain extent.
So I'm getting lost in the chat.
No
I'm
worries.
losing my voice. I had to cut the live chat early last time because I was losing it.
I was dying, man. I'm dying out here.
Everybody's getting the con plague, even those who didn't go.
Yeah. Hey, and everyone who said thank you for whatever we said, you're welcome. Ivan, GM911, you have to shamelessly plug your Patreon. Absolutely.
I agree.
We're all warlocks. We're warlocks of our own Patreon. And so it's part of our duty. The baby needs a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, so it's about that time, actually. This Saturday, we'll talk about what's going to be in the current upcoming Patreon rewards that you can get into before the end of the month. So if you become a Patreon before the end of the month, we'll discuss what's going to be available for those newly patroned people and at what levels. So we'll get into that on Saturday.
Also, you know what else Saturdays? There's a bunch of stuff going on Saturday. We got to do a giveaway. That was from, like, the giveaway ended a while ago, but now we actually have to give away. We got, like, sidelined the deck of cards for I believe beasts and animal companions. So we have that coming up. We also have we came back from Gen Con with a ton of stuff to give away. So we're going to share that stuff off. At some point, I think the Nerdarchy Dungeon Crate, we're going to have to, like, show that off. We got a lot of stuff to, like, show you guys and share, I guess. So there's going to be a lot of really cool giveaways. And also, remember, you don't have to be a Patreon to be part of the giveaways. You just have to go to nerdarchy.com, and there is a form that you can download and send to us, and that makes you eligible.
Oh, yeah, and the giveaways are not part of YouTube in any way.
Right, or Patreon.
Or Patreon. All right, Alexander has a thing about someone uses a true polymorph as their 9th level spell, and they get through the resistance on some creature, I guess, and then they use the true polymorph to turn it to solid gold. And I didn't know true polymorph could turn people into metals.
Oh, yeah, you thought? Yeah, I thought it was just creatures, right?
Yeah, I thought it just. I'm gonna have to check it out. So there's creature into creature, creature into object. Okay.
What's better than fighting a dragon and taking his horde? Fighting a dragon, turning it to solid gold, and taking his horde.
Well, it'll return to its normal form. The spell will end. It lasts up to an hour. So, I mean, I guess if you were a sorcerer, could you make that 2 hours? But that's it. So, yeah, they can get changed into solid gold, but it's, you know, if you break off let's say it was a dragon, you turned it into solid gold. Well, you break off a piece of that solid gold, it's just going to turn into a dragon wing or a claw whenever because it reverts. It's not permanent. You could probably wish it permanent, but you could probably also wish, I mean, that would probably be easier if you, well, then you couldn't do it because it's a 9th level spell. You only get like 1 of those, right? You don't get 2. So
Jed says if you hold concentration the whole hour, it's permanent.
Oh, I missed that part. Well, it's a pretty long spell, so yeah, read the whole spell, definitely.
Yeah, just give one of the flippant Jeremy Crawford explanations where he's just like, just freaking read it already. Like half the sage advices is basically what he says. He's like, what does it say? Oh, all right, you're out of here. Maybe you're out of here. All right. Man, it's like the second time ever I had to, like, boot somebody.
Okay, creature into object. It specifically says that after the spell ends, it returns to its normal form. Every other option talks about how it becomes permanent and when it becomes permanent. So there's general and specific. There's a general rule for true polymorph. If you concentrate for the hour, it becomes permanent. But specifically under creature into object, it says after the spell ends, it returns to its normal form. So I'm going to say that I would focus on the creature into object part because it specifically says object into creature. It says that if the spell becomes permanent, you no longer control the creature. It might be friendly or whatever. And then creature into creature. So it goes into that as well. So in each case, it talks about what happens when it becomes permanent, but in creature into object, it specifically says when the spell ends, it reverts to its normal form.
So you could turn a gold statue of a gold dragon into a permanently into a dragon, but you couldn't do it the other way around.
Yeah, as long as the challenge rating is 9 or lower.
Okay.
You can permanently turn a gold statue into a gold dragon.
A little one. A little one, and you could do it.
Yeah, so I would go with the because it's specific underneath the creature into object that you don't get the permanent gold statue. But sounds like a great sage advice, just in case to clear it up.
That's a good question, Jen. I don't know why they didn't put the permanent part. Because you know why? Because I think the reason I guess they did that is because it's the trope, like turning someone into a newt or something like that. It kind of makes sense. But at the same time, they don't want people turning dragons into adamantium so that
I was just gonna say
harvest adamantium and get rid of the dragon as well. That would be guess. I guess that would be my guess.
Yeah, they were fine with taking a chair and turning it into a dog, but they didn't want you turning that dog into a gold statue dog or something.
Let's say, so you mean the gold Tarrasque they are taking into one of the main cities is going to wake up? Yes, it is. And probably be hungry.
And you could always say, hey, it's magic. You never know how legendary beings are going to interact with 9th level spells, you know?
Yeah, Jake Simmons. That's why permanency wasn't added as a spell in 5e. that spell did have a few pitfalls.
Yeah, but if you had 2 casters, or if you had somebody with 2 9th level spells, or you had like a ring of wishing, you should be able to true polymorph it and then say, I'm going to wish that this spell never ends. It's going to count as a extraordinary use of the wish spell, but it's going to get you a solid gold Tarrasque pretty much.
We've been discovered by all the webcam girls because they're showing up in force. It's a swarm of webcam girls in the chat.
Maybe they're just bouncing from live stream to live stream area.
Maybe they're really just all D&D enthusiasts.
Let's just say that, and they just are spamming our channel, though they love D&D.
Yeah. I don't know. It's actually probably one person with multiple accounts.
That's probably the case. Well, Wild Picks, there's a thing on YouTube where it does the different recommendeds for your channels, but then it also has what's currently live and what it's decided to recommend to you based on, I think, your interest. And when I go on my personal account, I'll see Nerdarchy stuff because I watch Nerdarchy all the time. So if Nerdarchy is live, I'll see it in the live stream suggestions. So all they have to do is go on what's live now, and they can just bam, bam, bam.
They do skill checks for the cams. Save versus web spam.
It does make sense. It's your endless charisma.
Oh, yeah. It's the beard. They can't resist the beard. That's funny. Well, it's about that time anyway. I think when all the webcam girls start showing up, it's time to end the stream. We're right around the hour mark anyway, guys. We've been rocking like 80 plus throughout this thing. You guys are awesome.
Yes, thank you for showing up and interacting.
Yeah, tomorrow, everybody, I will have Dan Dillon on, and we're going to do like a post-Gen Con. We'll probably do more of these GM 9-1s as well. I would love to hear Dan's answers to some of these questions because he's a professional designer. He works with Kobold Press and a few other companies as well. So, he's made a lot of the really cool monsters in Tome of Beast, so that should be a lot of fun. And, thanks for hanging out with me today, Nate.
No problem. It was fun.
So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.